We had a ginormous money fight on our honeymoon. A lot of people view paying off my debt as the end goal, but really it is the starting line. This is a cycle that is never gonna end unless you do something really drastic to break up with it. It's actually gotten, I think statistically, like 5 to 8 times more expensive to get started in life than it ever was when we were all in our 20s. That product, it is a front. It looks like it's gonna be for the person getting into a home. It's not. It's for the real estate investor. And we were just told to sign on the dotted line. Who cares? You need a college degree.
Welcome back to the Catholic Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Marie Hansen, and I am so pumped for today's episode because we will be talking to Amanda Teixeira, and this episode is going to be so good. I think it's perfect for the holidays and the beginning of the new year, talking about money, debt, all things financial peace. But before we dive in, I do want to remind you guys, we are on YouTube now. I will leave the link if you're listening in the podcast to go subscribe over there. But we have a beautiful show where you can watch us talking to each other, see, the beautiful guests and all of that. So go subscribe on YouTube. We also have a Facebook group just for the Catholic Women Podcast. It's filled with beautiful Catholic women. I've seen some really cool posts. People have had help with their doctorate, dissertation, research, just really interesting stuff with a group of beautiful Catholic women. So if you would like to have that kind of community, I'll leave that note or that link in the show notes for you as well. Also a reminder, this season of the Catholic Women Podcast is brought to you by White Lily Weddings, the one-stop Catholic wedding shop. And if you are watching this on YouTube or you're watching any of the clips of this, my outfit is literally so comfy, so adorable, and it's from the Catholic Dress Co., which is a modest and feminine They have modest and feminine outfits for classy Catholic women. Beautiful, pretty affordable too, and I just love supporting small Catholic businesses. So go check them out at catholicdressco.com. All right, so we are so excited to welcome you to the show, Amanda. Amanda is the co-founder of WalletWin. And Amanda, I just want to say thank you so much for being here today first.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this, to dive into this topic.
Me too. I am a big proponent of financial peace. We are still working through the steps that you guys provide. But I guess before we dive into all of the logistics of financial peace and what we're going to talk about today, for listeners who may not know you yet, can you share a little bit about your journey, what led you and Jonathan to start WalletWin, and why financial discipleship is such a core part of your mission?
Yes, great question. We have been running our business, WalletWin, since 2017. But it didn't always, we didn't always begin handling money very well. Our story began with quite the opposite. We got engaged back in 2011. And at that point, we realized we should probably begin having financial conversations, but we didn't know how to start that conversation. And there really wasn't a lot of direction, and it definitely was not provided in marriage prep. And I'm guessing a lot of people relate to that. Mm-hmm. So this led us to a point where we kind of knew that we had different financial personalities. Like I was just more of a saver. My husband was more of a spender. And at the time, we were both fundraising our income, working for a nonprofit organization. We ended up getting married October of 2011. We go on a honeymoon. And this was the tipping point. Believe it or not, I had to check my email while I was on the honeymoon because I had a work project immediately that I was coming into right afterwards. So I checked my email once. Don't think I was, a workaholic sitting by the pool my entire honeymoon. Anyway, I checked the email and I got a notification that we had a mysterious credit card bill that was due for several $1,000s. And I asked Jonathan, what is this? And at that moment, his face kind of just goes white. He realized that he put the honeymoon that we were on, he was in charge of booking that and taking care of the details. He put it on a credit card that he'd opened brand new to get a few free nights on our honeymoon and make it longer. But then he forgot to write down that he opened that card. He forgot to write down the amount that he charged on that card. And we had no real plan of paying this card off. So we had a ginormous money fight on our honeymoon, which is so embarrassing. But we realized from that is not how we wanted to spend the rest of our marriage. And, we had witnessed through people we'd known, family, friends, neighbors. Excuse me, I recently got over a cold and I lost my voice.
That's okay.
Just that we'd seen that financial division can really take root between couples, even couples of shared faith, even couples that normally get along in all other areas. Sometimes finances is just that wedge that people kind of accept, and they just put their head in the sand and they just know it's going to be a thing, and they don't even talk to each other about it because it's going to be so divisive and so combative when they do bring it up. So we knew that's not what we wanted for our future. We wanted to be on the same team. We wanted to be unified, not just in our faith, but in every aspect of our life. And we got home from the honeymoon, tallied up the debt, figured out we owed about $25,000 between credit cards and student loans, and that our take-home pay was only about $35,000 when we were doing our fundraising. And we realized, gosh, that's just not a whole lot of margin. We need to get a plan in place. So we learned the skill of budgeting. We dove into reading different books and listening to different podcasts. And the only resources that were truly out there were Christian. And so they were good, but we were getting a lot of Christian financial advice. And that was good to just get us going, get us starting our budgeting journey, get us talking about money on the same page, discovering money in Scripture because there's just so much there. And we ended up getting out of debt in about 7.5 months. And we just continued that momentum forward into saving, into home buying, into generous giving. And we just were excited to continue to meet different financial milestones as time went on. And as all of this is happening, we had friends asking us, how are you guys doing what you're doing? Because what we were seeing in the apostolate that we worked for was a lot of friends not being able to stay on staff as long as they wanted because they had crushing amounts of debt or they weren't fundraising enough. We had friends that wanted to be open to life immediately after getting married, but they both had like $80,000 of debt and they were freaked out and panicked and didn't know if they could give that generous yes. We had friends that were turned away from religious life because they had massive amounts of student loans. And so we started to get angry at this point that money should never be an obstacle to saying yes to whatever God's asking us in our life. We need to follow him no matter what. And we could see that the church was being shackled and hamstrung by finances. Ministries couldn't grow. The new evangelization was going unanswered in some corners of the world because there wasn't enough money. And so we got frustrated and upset. We began to lead Dave Ramsey classes actually at our parish, but as we led the class, we had to keep pausing it to fill in a more holistic Catholic worldview around certain things. Dave was fantastic on getting out of debt and some of those basic things, but his interpretation of Scripture on certain things also was off or was out of alignment with how we view money as Catholics. So after enough of this and coaching people at our kitchen table, we felt this call within a call, almost like a Mother Teresa who was a religious sister and then God asked her to kind of go serve in another capacity as a religious sister. We were missionaries serving in the new evangelization on college campuses, but the Lord was saying, I actually think financial formation from a Catholic perspective, it sounds just so dry, but that's where I want you. That's where I want you to go, because when the church is freed financially, my people can give their generous yes in whatever I ask. And so we knew, okay, this is a little dry, but you know what? We're going for it. So that in 2017 is when we answered that call, founded WalletWin, and we have been just we've been unpacking the church's perspective on all things money, economics, finance, marriage ever since.
Love that. So can you give us a brief overview? You've mentioned WalletWin. Can you give us a brief overview of what WalletWin is and what the method, what the WalletWin method is?
Sure. So I have a visual. For those who are playing along on YouTube, they can check this out when I find it. But essentially, the WalletWin method is, of course, I'm not going to be able to find it here. It is the 4 financial phases and the 12 money milestones. And we created this because we didn't want people to feel overwhelmed. A lot of times when people feel that burden to just get their finances in order, they go on the internet and, they see trending reels, trending TikToks, and then they feel pressure to get 9 things done at once. They got to get their debt done. They got to get a budget. They got to start investing like yesterday. And they all of a sudden, and they got to buy a house immediately. They feel like they have to do a ton of things all at once. And that's overwhelming. Nobody ends up getting momentum then, and it just waters down your results, and then you give up. That's pretty much the story of most people kind of figuring it out on their own. The beauty of the method is that it just gives people that step-by-step conveyor belt, if you will, process of, great, you can look at our method and know exactly what financial step you're on. You check the box when you've completed it, and you move on to the next one. They're bite-sized, they're not overwhelming, they keep you focused and directed on the exact next best financial step for you and your family and your situation. And it kind of helps you put those blinders on, if you will, so that you're not getting distracted by all the good things, but you're actually paying attention to the great things that you need to be focused on. I'm never going to find this thing because usually my husband is the one who locates it in the book. So
yeah, that's
anyway,
okay.
You can go over to our website if you're a visual person and you want to just see it mapped out for you, you can. But essentially, it starts off with figuring out those basics. Think your money mindset, thinking with the mind of the church about money, and some of those preliminary steps of getting that habit and that skill of budgeting mastered. Do you have the proper insurance? Just kind of taking care of what's going on in your own home, right? Setting the financial foundation. And then you're moving on to some of those more traditional milestones of getting out of debt and building an emergency fund. And that is where a lot of people spend a significant amount of time, and they really start to feel proud of themselves getting those results. And then after that come those milestones of doing the investing. That can be a lot of fun, but a lot of people rush to that step before they're ready. Yeah. Home buying, which can also be a really fun, exciting journey, but it's kind of turned into a insanity fest over the last few years with lack of affordability. And then, of course, saving for education costs for your own or if you have kids, and then being super generous and not just, 10% of giving what the Lord's entrusting to you, but getting to a point where you can be radically generous and be giving well beyond that. And so all the way from the beginning steps to the farthest steps in your entire financial journey are marked out on our 12 money milestones.
Perfect. I will make sure I link that in the show notes for everyone so they can go see that visual as well. So you mentioned kind of getting the basics in place, insurance, all of that. I know what a lot of people focus on is debt because most Americans carry a lot of debt. So why would you encourage Catholics to get out of debt, and how can they do it quickly? Because a lot of people just say like, well, I'll always have a car payment, or, they just see debt as something that everyone has and it's just a normal part of life. But I disagree with that. I know you disagree with that. Why? And what would you tell people for how they can at least jumpstart their debt journey? Debt payoff journey, not debt journey.
You're exactly right, Marie. People think that debt is inevitable. There's just no way around it. But when you begin budgeting, you begin really taking control of the finances given to you. You're more aware, you're in the know, and you're creating a plan for it. And so there really isn't going to be a need. If you're properly budgeting and you have your emergency savings and you're forward thinking about your money, there's not a need to go into debt for things. Particularly lifestyle expenses, like a car or groceries or vacation, or hopefully not student loans, but that's a whole nother conversation. Medical debt, etc. So we do work with people on how to get that organized and to get it paid off. We encourage people to use what we call the stack and attack method, where you're going to list out all of your debts, smallest to largest, regardless of the interest rate, and begin attacking the smallest one so you can get the quickest win as soon as possible. And then the next time that you go, the next budget, you scrape up a little bit more money. Maybe you've eliminated one of the debts, and so now you don't have a minimum payment on that. You can combine that with what you have in the next budget, and you can move forward at paying that next smallest debt. We did this, and now we've taught thousands of people to do the same. And it lights our brains up. It gives us that reward center of our brain, all the light up that it needs. And it reinforces those good habits. Our brain says, okay, I budgeted, I worked that side hustle, I trimmed up grocery spending, and then I got this result. And so it makes you want to keep doing that. It makes you maybe even want to do more. And it helps you to just develop those strong habits that are really a force to be reckoned with as time goes on, and those compound. And those habits don't just leave you once the debt is paid off. They can then be turned positively towards all of the milestones that come after paying off debt. A lot of people view paying off my debt as the end goal, it's the touchdown, but really it is the starting line. There's a whole lot of life after debt, and I think most people just aren't even aware that there's other things they need to be focused on and doing, but it's all kind of out there after the debt is done. Because what debt does is it ties us and it ties our money up into the past. It's perpetually always paying off the past. And our money then is not free to work for us in the present moment, and it's not free to work for us in the future. And that right there, it's really the reason that a lot of households just feel an immense pinch and a lot of pressure over the last several years, particularly with inflation. And so we have every quarter, I swear, I read every single quarter for the last year and a half that we keep having the highest credit card delinquency rate that we've ever had, and that the balances being carried on credit cards just keep growing. And I know that times have shifted, and it's not always just people throwing, an irresponsible vacation to Disney World on it anymore. It's groceries and clothing for their children and school tuition. These are the things now going on credit cards, and that's scary for people. But it is important to realize that this is a cycle that is never going to end unless you do something really drastic to break up with it. You need to draw that line in the sand, decide that there's no new debt. I'm not putting anything else on the credit card. I'm not getting another car loan. I'm not taking on a medical IOU. I'm not taking a loan from my cousin's brother's aunt. And just deciding that this is not a lifestyle you live anymore. And what happens then is that if there's an emergency or there's an unexpected expense or something comes up, and your brain can't just take that easy default of, I guess, charge it on the Visa. It starts to ask different questions. How might I be able to afford paying for that, car repair that needs to come up? How might we be able to pay for school tuition? You start to ask different questions, and then that influences the next steps that you take, and you might be doing creative things that you never would have even considered if the credit card bailed you out in an instant, or the HELOC just paid for it. And now all of a sudden you're going to be getting different results. And so you do have to be willing to do some different, creative, maybe even challenging things sometimes to live a debt-free lifestyle, but it is 100% possible. Between you and your budget and some creative thinking, you can absolutely stay out of debt.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about homes, but I first want to talk about credit cards because you mentioned how people can just charge it. What is your perspective on credit cards? I know Dave Ramsey is totally against them in all, at all times, whether you're out of debt or not. I guess I tend to believe that just because I know in our experience, we were spending probably 12 to 15% more when we were using a credit card versus doing debit, just because you can add, one more thing to your cart and that $10 to $20 every time adds up and you don't even realize it. So it's just been like life-changing for me to stop using credit altogether. But I'd love to know your take on that because I know people see the polarizing reels of Dave Ramsey, who is like, no credit cards ever, ever. And I just would love to know what your thoughts on credit cards are.
Sure. Yeah, we actually did a podcast episode on this and we got a lot of flack and a lot of heat from it. So how we approach it, we were breaking down like, what would the church's stance be? Is this something that can be a product that a Catholic could have and utilize prudently and responsibly with virtue? And the answer to that question is yes, but we had a ton of caveats, right, in the way. And so, like you said, you oftentimes overspend when you have a credit card. Just the sheer fact of it feels a little bit removed, and then the bill doesn't really I don't even think about this until a month later, 6 weeks later. I'm now sitting here and I see this Costco trip for $575 and like, I couldn't even tell you what it was anymore. Yep. So it takes this distance, and that's not a good thing for our money. We need to feel our money, touch our money, see our money. And there's brief studies. I think that the credit card companies have a vested interest in a lot of studies not being revealed or seeing the light of day. Yep. But the few studies that have been done show that some people have paid up to 50 to 100% more on a purchase if it went on a credit card versus a debit card.
Wow.
So I do want people to be aware that when I talk about could a credit card be useful for somebody, if you are somebody that is currently in debt and is paying interest on a credit card, the answer is 100% no. Credit cards are not for you. You need to be done. You need to close them all, freeze them, cancel them, and you need to get different wiring in your brain before you can even entertain this as a possible option down the road. So I'm assuming that's happened, for many years. I think for the first 8 or 9 years of our marriage, yeah, that was us. We just, because we were paying interest on a card early on, we didn't want anything to do with them. We were done. Then eventually we did get a card. And we were kind of experimenting, is this something that is useful? Are you going to overpay, etc.? And so we don't put a lot on the card, but what we realized is that as long as you are putting only budgeted for expenses on the card and then you're paying it off immediately, even before the payment date, so it's literally just a tool. It's where you're, putting money through for a day or two and then you're still feeling it. That is fine, but I did notice there was still some we still paid a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to ask ourselves, is this really worth the 1% cash back? Is this really worth the credit card or the airline miles or whatever it was?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was pretty much no, unless there was a really special circumstance. So it's not really a strategy that I encourage people to use. I don't think it's going to be the deal breaker it's not going to be the thing in your life that makes the biggest difference. But some people have fun. It's kind of their hobby to travel hack and to do all these things. And for those people, as long as they're aware they're probably overspending, they are paying it off. They're only putting budgeted for things on it. They're paying it off immediately. If that's a hobby that they want to spend time sitting around organizing, it can be done responsibly and prudently. I've seen it done well, but it's going to be a very small fraction of people that are really that type A, kind of hyper, super organized, kind of nerdy people, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
They live in spreadsheets. They love data. They like tracking stuff like this. That's almost nobody I know.
Yes.
So just be aware of that it's probably not for you. You're going to see some influencer on TikTok telling you about how they flew to Greece for free. And you're going to want to do the same thing. But they're not telling you all the behind the scenes things. They're not telling you the 25 hours it took to organize and manage it. And for most people, if they just spent 25 hours on a side hustle or at work, they would have made more. And they could have just paid for the dang ticket. So you just always have to be aware. The time that you're putting in is not free. The time you're putting in counts against the benefits that you're even getting. And then there is the not insignificant issue that a decent bit of these rewards that are handed out, some of them are funded just by, people swipe the card and then the merchant fee goes to Visa or to Amex. But a portion of it came from somebody else who couldn't pay their card off. So there's also that moral conundrum of, I'm not directly causing that, but I am now indirectly benefiting from it. It's a layer removed, so it's not like you need to take it to confession, but for some more sensitive consciences, that's going to be an automatic no.
Yep. Yeah, I'm so glad. I completely agree with everything you said. I'm glad you brought up that last part because I didn't even realize that. I don't know where I thought the benefits were coming from. But as soon as I realized, oh my gosh, it's the fees for people who can't even pay off their card that they're giving out as points. Of course, they're not going to just give you free money. They're gonna be profitable, of course. I'm like, that just feels wrong. I feel like I'm stealing from someone who's poor, and not that. Like you said, it's a layer removed, but why would I do that? Why would I play that game? That just seems wrong to me. And then the other thing, like you said, people are like, well, the cash back, but if you're getting 5% cash back, which I don't even know if I've ever seen a credit card do 5% cash back, but let's just say you are. Almost all of the studies show that people statistically spend 12 to 18% more, like you said, on a credit card. I know you experienced that. I experienced that. Once you cut it out, you're like, wow, I really do spend more. And so 12 minus 5, you're still spending 7% more than you would on debit or something like that. So I'm glad you addressed that, because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's worth it for the benefits. But like you said, it's just a really, really, you'd have to be super precise with exactly how you're playing that game to really actually benefit from it and not actually spend more. So I really love that you addressed all of that. So now let's turn and talk about housing, because I know this is a really hot topic right now. It's something that we are struggling with. So for listeners who don't know, my husband and I, we basically followed your method without, knowing it was your method, and paid off all of our debt, went scorched earth, pay off all of our debt. We're working through an emergency fund and then eventually a down payment. But it just feels like it's continuously getting further and further out of reach. So we got married in 2021, so we had no shot at getting into the housing market before it almost doubled in price. And so starter homes, at least in our area, are like $350,000, and that's not even for a nice house. That's for a house that needs work. And it just feels like we are never going to get there, because the amount of a down payment we'd need to be able to afford that mortgage. And, I understand houses haven't creeped up a ton in the past year to two, thankfully, because it was crazy the past couple of years before that. But yeah, I personally feel really stuck, and I know a lot of my peers as well, a lot of young people today with young families, like we have 2 kids in a tiny apartment, and it just feels like it's going to be that way forever. So what would you like to say, I guess, about the housing market? And then do you have any advice for people who are just feeling discouraged, even though they're being very diligent about trying to steward their money and get to an emergency fund or get to a house? You know how sometimes a single image can stop you, soften you, almost open a window in your heart? Hannah Briley, owner of Mangio Arts, believes that's no accident, because it's through our hearts that we encounter beauty, and beauty is the doorway to God, a doorway that invites us into conversion time and time again. That's why the art we place in our home matters. We all need those small daily encounters with Christ, glimpses of Him woven right into the rhythm of our everyday life. From beautiful images of Our Lady, visual reflections on Christ and the saints, to scenes that reflect holiness of everyday life, Hannah Briley pours prayer and intentionality into each art piece created. But she also knows that beauty is personal, which is why Mangio Arts offers custom commissions as well, such as family portraits, pet portraits, house paintings, custom saint devotions, and so much more. Know a couple who would love their wedding photo transformed into one-of-a-kind art? Or a family moving to a new home who wants to capture the memories of a place they leave behind? Mangio Arts can capture those moments for you in a beautiful, irreplaceable work of art. Whether in wood burning, watercolor, or charcoal, each piece is handcrafted to be cherished for years to come. If you're longing to surround your family with art that nourishes the soul, shop Mangio Arts store on Etsy and use the code WOMANPODCAST15 for 15% off your order. You can also support Hannah by following her on social media at Mangio Arts. That's MANGIO Arts, where you can find additional links for commission requests and exclusive access to deals and upcoming events through her monthly newsletter. She looks forward to sharing her artwork with you, and she hopes she can bring unique beauty into your home. I recently came across some new textile designs that actually made me cry. I have actually never cried at textile designs before, but I did for these. Holly Gurton is a contemporary fiber artist, textile designer, teacher, and writer. Her fiber artworks are made using techniques like felt, crochet, and embroidery, and in 2019, she collaborated with Anthropologie to create a collection of fall home goods and holiday decorations based off her artwork. How cool is that? Her artwork recognizes the Father's creativity entwined in every surface of the world and the human dignity that is revealed through our participation with it. In her 14 years in textile design, she has created patterns for fashion brands like Lilly Pulitzer and Marie Oliver. She has found that the Father speaks through textiles and in craftsmanship, and in all that she does, she proclaims the beauty of our relationship with the Father as experienced through the work of our hands. She is currently working on a body of work for a solo exhibition in North Carolina in the summer of 2026. Every Friday, she sends a delightful Substack, I absolutely love it, in her newsletter called The Rundown that includes behind-the-scenes looks at her art practice, beautiful discoveries through the world of fashion, interiors, and artisan makers, and what it's like to be a working artist and mom of 4 boys. You can sign up for The Rundown and find all her artwork at hollygurtin.com. That's HOLLYGUERTIN.com and at Holly Gurtin Art on Instagram. I highly recommend it. It is beautiful. Go check her out.
Yeah, I love that you brought this up. I love that you asked this question. Honestly, I think it's just not even talked about enough of what is going on for our young people right now. And, you know, a lot of people that are older, like elder millennials, Gen X, boomers, like they don't want to admit that it's actually gotten, I think statistically, like 5 to 8 times more expensive to get started in life than it ever was when we were all in our 20s. And that's a huge problem. It's a huge problem in the church. It's a huge problem in society. And we can only exist like that for so long before something really bad happens. So the housing affordability has certainly been one of those really tough situations. We often joke that like we couldn't even rebuy our own house that we're in.
Yes, my parents
built.
say the same thing.
It's so funny. Yeah, like you mentioned that starter home that needs work. I mean, back in 2016, we built a 5-bedroom, 3,000 square foot house. It was less than what you even mentioned. And
That's
I feel
crazy.
like, oh my gosh, how is this possible? And I see it in our area too. I don't even know how people are buying homes in our neighborhood. I'm always like, what do they do?
Yes.
Did
I feel like you need to be a doctor to get a tiny home nowadays.
Not even. Like, I'm like, it's beyond that, let alone if they live in like Denver. I'm like, this is like, yeah, your parents liquidated like their retirement account to buy that or something. I swear to you, there's more going on than meets the eye. So the good news is that there is a lot of chatter going on. Our economy has been super all over the place the last 5-6 years, all over the place. So ever since COVID, there's been a lot of manipulation going on behind the scenes, economically, on the world stage. There's been a lot happening. News on the street is that in 2026, they're going to, turn back on the printing machine, the money machine, and there's going to be more money going into the economy and interest rates are going to come down. So that's going to be an aim in 2026. So for those people who they're at the stage of home buying, they've gotten out of debt, they're budgeting, they have that emergency savings of 4 to 6 months expenses set aside, saved up, ready to go. I would begin just tucking money away for a down payment. In the instance that when things do lower, you are just ready to strike while the iron is hot. You need to be in that situation. And we were in a completely different scenario back in 2014 when we bought our first home, but we did buy it in Denver, and that was kind of like almost the last good time. And things were going really, really, really quickly. Like it was the era of houses selling in like 7 hours.
Oh, wow.
So it was scary. And every single month they were going up by like $10,000, So I'm thankful for that God started us on our journey so that when we got to that milestone, we were going crazy saving money and that we were able to strike when the iron was hot and just get into something, And we're not in the era where we don't exist in those conditions right now and houses are sitting. They're just sitting. And so prices will begin to come down. But we are, if interest rates do come down, there will be that weird tipping point. It might be a couple of month window, but prices will then start to go up again, if that makes sense. So it's like we're going to be in a little bit of a dance. Like if interest rates come down, those prices are going to go back. So we're kind of in an era where things are kind of slowly creeping down, but then it could switch. So that's why I just encourage anybody that if this makes sense, start saving heavily right now. Like do anything you can to set money aside. And I know that you you mentioned that you guys are budgeting. And it's tough that sometimes there's unexpected things that happen in our budgets and we don't get to set as much money aside. I do want to encourage people to just be aware of all the potential things that could still come up so you don't get discouraged when they come up and you feel like you have to rob your house fund. So in your budget, just set aside money in the category of like car repairs. Set aside money for medical costs, and paying deductibles or getting supplements or just the things that whenever they come up, I don't want people to get mad and be frustrated. Just have money tucked aside for those things. And then the rest of it you can put into your house fund and hope that the moment comes sooner than later where those interest prices drop and there's a house that meets your affordability. There is always the option of, in people that do live in high cost of living areas, something they've just had to do in the last 5 or 6 years is look at relocating. And I know that's really unideal, but for a lot of people, if home ownership is that important, there's no shame in just considering a relocation, even temporarily, or just living farther away and having a commute for several years, a planned lengthier commute to just get into something so you can start building that equity and then kind of jump into that, next right-sized home 5-7 years down the road. So that's an option, but there are people that maybe home buying is, you're not convinced that it's the right next best step. And so it is an option. You don't have to decide that's what you want to do. And if you get to that milestone and it's still a question mark or the affordability is just so insane that you'd have to save $100,000 to even get a down payment to do that, you might just decide you're just going to go all in on investing. And you might start building your investments instead and pouring money into retirement and rethink about the home buying journey in a few years. So either one, you can kind of flip-flop whatever is going to fit your current circumstance more. It sounds like for you and your husband and your kids, getting into something different is going to be an ideal arrangement. Now, I'll say this. People have also, because of this, I mentioned earlier with the credit card thing, if you don't think like the credit card will bail me out and you have to get creative and think about how might I pay this bill. I have seen so many clever instances in the last 5 years of couples saying, you know what, home buying is so it's so beyond our income or whatever, like we can't do it. But how might we find a home for our family or find housing that meets our needs? And there have been so many clever, interesting things. So I've seen people living in, barndos, like barndominiums.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen families going in together, like 5 or 6 families, buying a school in like an old town that's more or less vacant now. Like there's just nobody in the town. And they renovate the school and they all share like the cafeteria and the gym. But then the classrooms, they renovate into their apartment spaces.
That's cool.
There's families that are buying RVs. Like RVs are not what they used to be. They're apartments on wheels.
Yes.
We have an RV. We love it. And we lived in it once for like 6 weeks. And I don't know how some of these people fit a family of 8 or 10 into their bus, but they do it.
Yep.
So there's just no shortage. I've seen people living on boats. There is really no shortage of clever ways that you could figure it out if you really wanted something different and you didn't want to move away and you didn't want to buy something far away for the commute. If you're willing to just sit down and learn and kind of learn from other people, like what are they doing? There might be an option that works for you. That's a little bit non-traditional, but maybe it would get you into a house sooner than later.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have seen big families living in RVs, and I'm like, that would be really hard. But you know what? If you're not paying rent every month, imagine how much you could sock. If you could sock your rent away for even 1 to 2 years, that would be, a good down payment. So
yep. Oh,
yeah, that's really good. That's really good to know. And yeah, for us, it's always like, glad to be out of debt and we can cash flow things. But like yesterday, my husband had a $3,000 car repair, and it's just like, and so this month we can't save anything, and it's it's things like that. But they come up, and it's medical expenses, and it is, they're part of life, so it's not ever like fully unexpected. But it definitely stings when you're like, you don't see your savings account balance move at all, and it's just stuck. which I know a lot of people have been feeling too. So I'm glad you addressed that. And yes, with the interest rates coming down, that would be good, but then prices will spike again, which is tough for people who already can't afford homes. Do you have a suggested, like, do you suggest people do like 15-year over 30-year loans? I know now they're going to have 50-year loans. Do you
Oh
have
my
thoughts
gosh,
on that?
there was a 50-year. That one.
That sounds horrible to me.
Yeah. No, it's just I've learned enough to know that, like, President Trump is a real estate guy. And so that product, it is a front. It looks like it's going to be for the person getting into a home. It's not. It's for the real estate investor. And I'll die on that hill. It is because if you can just buy real estate at a lower cost and then, you rent it out or you Airbnb it or you get all these deductions on the building you own, like, you never really want to pay off the mortgage. That's a strategy of real estate investors. So that product is crap for the average American, and I would absolutely never recommend it. It is for banks and investors, and that's just the truth of it. And the more that we wake up to that reality, that even the debt situation, it's pretty much all just us giving money to the 1%. Just be aware of that.
Making the rich richer,
and get smarter.
Yes.
And be done with that.
Yes.
And you need to like work on, your own family economy, not building up the economy of others. So, I forget the question now. 15-year fixed is what we typically recommend. So have people, there have been people that just in a high cost living area, whatnot, they've had to get the 30-year. But if you make one extra payment on a 30-year a year, it makes it a 23 automatically. Okay. So that's getting you there. I would, again, we don't recommend it, but I do understand that sometimes it just has to happen.
Yep.
The 15-year is going to get you as efficiently into the property as possible, but that is tough when the housing prices have been what they have been and the percentage rates have been what they have been.
Yes. No, thank you for answering that. I mean, when we ran the math on 15 versus 30, the extra interest you would pay, we could rent for 13 years at our current rate for. And it's like, wow, if we could just rent for even 5 years extra, imagine all the money we'd save in interest. But the other game you're playing is like these housing prices are so high. And like, are you ever going to get in if they continue to go higher? And so it's just this, game and a little bit of a prayer of like which is the best option for us in this situation. So okay, glad you answered that, because I do tend to lean towards 15-year, but it is, like you said, hard with some of these housing prices to get the down payment for that. Before I kind of just ask a few questions on how to handle financial stress and worries, and from a Catholic perspective, I'd love for you to just touch on student loans. I know we're in like one of the biggest student loan crises in history. I've seen a lot of people frustrated lately that with the big, beautiful bill, some federal loans have been capped, and I feel like people are frustrated with that. But I personally think it's a good idea. They're capped at $50,000 a year, which also that's already extremely, extremely high. Plus, some people can get private loans on top of that. So for people to be mad that they can't get more than $50,000 a year for even like a graduate degree, like to me, that just I can't fathom taking out that much. I understand people are like, well, PAs and doctors. I get it. My sister's a PA. Like, I get it, and I get that schooling is expensive, but there's got to be a better way than borrowing more than $50,000 per year for that kind of degree. I would love to get your perspective on the student loans crisis and the changes with the big, beautiful bill. All right, Catholic brides, or honestly, anyone who loves a good Catholic wedding, I need to tell you about something that is so good and so needed in our little Catholic corner of the internet. This episode is brought to you by White Lily Weddings, the one-stop Catholic wedding shop I wish existed when I got married. It's your cozy, curated hub for planning a wedding that's beautiful, meaningful, and deeply Catholic without losing your peace in the process. Inside White Lily Weddings, you'll find gorgeous Catholic wedding templates for programs, invitations, signage, stationery, all of the pretty things you don't want to DIY from scratch, a whole directory of vetted Catholic vendors who actually get the sacrament, and yes, so many of them offer exclusive discounts just for White Lily brides. Seriously, some even offer $1,000 off any package booked with them just for finding them through White Lily Weddings. And here's the part I love. You can also grab their free Ultimate Catholic Wedding Planning Checklist. It's literally the master list with over 350 to-dos that keeps brides sane, organized and on track while planning a sacramental wedding. It is so, so good. And because you're part of this community, you get 25% off the entire shop with code CWP. Yep, 25%, the whole shop. So whether you want a stunning mass program, a vendor list you can actually trust, or just a checklist that stops the "am I forgetting something" panic, head to whitelillyweddings.com. That's white, LILY, weddings.com, and use the code CWP for 25% off. Make your Catholic wedding as beautiful and intentional as the marriage you're preparing for.
Yeah, so honestly, this has been something we've always been team avoid student loan, always, because I feel like millennials, we were the first generation. Our parents, some went to college, a lot didn't, and we were just told to like sign on the dotted line. Who cares? You need a college degree. That was the mantra of our life. It wasn't even a question. Of course you were going to college. That was it. And we were just told to sign up for whatever loans we needed. Don't think about this, that, or the other. Like, it was not even considered for most of us to like ask how much college would cost, or to think about how much we would make after college, or let alone how much we would owe.
Right.
And so that burned our generation, and it's really only gotten worse. And so now Jonathan and I, in the last few years, we keep having all these coaching sessions with young couples that particularly have gone to private Catholic colleges, and they have over 6 figures of loans between the two of them. And then the wife is now, pregnant and wants to stay home with their first, and they're asking us how they possibly can still pay all their bills. And the answer is like, you have to work. Like, you've created a situation for yourself, but you didn't even know you're walking into it.
Yep.
And so it's alarming, because they don't even have money to give, because they're literally just paying to keep a roof over their head, food on the table, and the lights on, and gas in the car. And then that's as far as the money stretches, like if they are in certain areas of the country. So that we started speaking on this issue of like, colleges need to reinvent themselves. Like, this is going to be a meltdown situation eventually. Not just Catholic colleges. Yes, I do think private Catholic colleges have it. They owe it to themselves, and they were the pioneers of the collegiate education system to begin with.
Yep.
So they have so much leadership potential to maybe reorient what this looks like, instead of just putting up another gorgeous brand new building and a luxury gym. Like, what could we do instead?
Yes.
Like, how could we rethink this? How could we make sure that our graduates are not graduating in massive amounts of debt, unable to do anything for the first decade out of college, financially speaking, other than just pay this back? How could we, help educate and form souls? Because I think that's what Catholic education does best, is that human formation. I value the university experience more for that. But I think Catholic colleges could play a role in pioneering something different. And then all colleges are eventually going to need to reconsider this, because we're getting to the era of not everything needs a degree anymore. We have YouTube University, and you don't really need a college degree to go do this, that, or the other. I could just spend 10 hours watching tutorials on YouTube and actually start doing my work.
Yeah.
It
Not
just
to
doesn't
mention
make
with AI
sense.
now too. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, with AI, like, the way that we learn and what we need to learn in order to do the things that we're called to do is shifting and changing. And if colleges don't change how they show up and participate in that, eventually they're just going to kind of fade off into the distance. Like, people are now getting smarter, and they're realizing that they don't really want to spend $75,000 going to college. And I do think that's partly because people have been more transparent and honest and open about the numbers. And so the younger generations, Gen Z and younger, like they're just not willingly going to walk into that trap. Some will, because of familial expectations, etc. But a lot are just opting out and choosing something different. And it gives colleges that opportunity to say, what could we do differently to make this affordable and actually useful, and not just give people degrees that they're not even going to be able to get jobs in that field, etc.
Yep. Yep. What would you say to people who are like nurses and want to go on to become like an NP or a doctor, and they just feel like their only option is massive student loans?
You know, that it's a tough situation. I do know that that happens. I am a nurse. I have a bachelor's in nursing. And so I discerned that path. You know, I ended up choosing missionary work instead. But there was a time when it was, do I go on for that master's? And there's always that opportunity to do the work study program where you're working on that PA degree, or you're in med school, or you're working on the master's in nursing, and you're also teaching alongside professors. You're working at a hospital. There are levers to pull if you're willing to pull them, but they're not always convenient. So I would do whatever I could to avoid loans. And so I would be the one seeking out these odd opportunities and going for them. I'm just not going to walk willingly into debt. And so I understand why people do it the other way, but then we are at the era of like, I'm seeing doctors even now. They're not even, people used to think doctors were the rich ones. I'm seeing the numbers.
No, yeah.
They're $200,000-$300,000 in debt. And then the housing costs, and they're really not making that much anymore. So, and if they didn't have $10,000 a month that they were paying towards, loans, it would really make a difference. So I just can't encourage that people do it. I always encourage leaving no stone unturned to avoid debt. But then if there is absolutely no stone left, it could be something to run the numbers on in the most minimal capacity possible.
Love that. And I love that you said there are always levers to pull, but they're not always convenient. That is the truth with all of this, with financial freedom, getting out of debt. I mean, I hear so many excuses of why people can't. I'm like, no, you can. Like, you absolutely can. For us, it was, I had a 19-month-old and a newborn, and my husband was gone 6 a.m. to midnight working two jobs, and I was nannying 3 kids, and it was, we did what we had to do, and you can do it, and it's not convenient. I don't even remember most of those days because my brain blocked them out, but you can do it. And that's exactly it with the student loan thing too, is I feel like there are just so many different levers to pull that people just aren't willing to because they're hard. But that's exactly getting into Catholicism now. Doing the harder thing is often what we're called to do in Catholicism. Not to unnecessarily burden ourselves, but that is, to walk that path with Jesus and carry your cross. So let's turn to a couple Catholic things really quick. So what saints do you turn to in times of financial stress or worry?
It's changed over the years. I think lately it's Zaylee Martin, because she was also a business owner and she was always griping about her business. But like, she also, I relate to it so much, of like, sometimes the business is booming, it's going well, but sometimes it's not. And you get into a situation where it's like, well, we're in a little bit of a dry spell, and we owe our staff their salary. I guess we'll pay everybody except us. Like, we've 100% been there before in our business, but it's the right thing to do. And so anyway, I just relate with her so much, her financial integrity, her generosity, her savviness. So oftentimes, like, even in the letters that like she wrote to her brother, or you'll see finances oftentimes mentioned or come up kind of indirectly. Like, she tells her brother to like pitch her husband for a business investment idea right now because he's in a good mood. Like,
she's smart.
So you could tell that they were financially like united, but she also respected her husband, but she knew that she had influence too. So I've loved examining not only just their romantic relationship and the way they parented together as a team, but even how they were business partners, because he did sell a business to then come work with her and hers.
I love that.
So I love that story. I loved St. Catherine Drexel. I can't relate at all with her story, because her story was that she was just a wealthy heiress, like being privately tutored and flying all over Europe. And, eventually like... Eventually, God asked her to like leave it all and just and spend her entire life serving the poor. I'm like, But
Yeah.
she was so savvy, and she was always just so, she understood money's purpose, and she was never just manipulating it for herself. She was always putting it to work. So I really admire that about her, someone who had everything at her disposal, but she made it work hard for the kingdom. I love that example. Another one, different chapters for us, St. Anthony. There's times when you're like, where's the money?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be in my bank account, St. Anthony, but can you go find it? Because I know God has it in his kingdom somewhere. And he's waiting to bring it to us so we can say yes to whatever this thing is that we feel like he's asking us to say yes to. So can you go locate that, St. Anthony, and just come back? That'd be great. So
I love that. I never even thought of that. That's so creative.
So
it's
there's
out
that.
there. There are billionaires.
Yes. And then there's just, oh my goodness, I could not. We have personally, but we've also witnessed the most insane stories of God's providence. So, I mean, if we really understood God's providence, and if we just abandon to it, we will always get what we need.
Yep.
It's just true. We need to tempt it more. We need to throw ourselves off the cliff, and he will provide. But it takes that really risky leap where you're going to look like an idiot until the last second, and then he saves you. So it's usually like a prudent thing. You're not doing it because you're responsible, but it's like you feel led into that jump, and you feel peace in making the leap, even though you're scared. Those are the situations, not just I didn't think about my bills. Yeah. But even then, even in those circumstances, sometimes the Lord still takes care of you. St. Matthew is a good example, too, of just like diligence with the numbers. And so I encourage new budgeters to always ask for his help.
Love that.
He, spent part of his life in manipulating the numbers for himself, but I'm sure he likes spending his heaven helping us here on earth organize our numbers for, for our provision and with the things that we need to take care of. So just there's no shortage of saints that we can turn to. There were saints that were dirt poor. There were saints that were kings and queens of every economic situation we could find ourselves in. There is an example of a heavenly brother or sister who handled money with virtue in our exact circumstances. And we just have to find them, turn to them, and invite them to walk with us. And then, of course, just that abandonment to God the Father.
Yep.
And just trusting him.
Love that. And I love that you were talking about all the different like crazy stories you've heard. I don't know if anyone listens to Relevant Radio, but I've heard Father Rocky on Relevant Radio mention how during the family rosary, people will call in and ask for, like help with finances or stuff. And he said someone once prayed for a house and then literally someone gifted them a house. So ever since hearing that story, my prayer is like, please God, gift us a house or something like that. But how has God, you said this happened in your life too. How has God financially provided for you in the midst of challenging times over the years?
Oh, man. Okay. I'll give two examples, and I'll keep them kind of brief. But, I mean, we're an adoptive family, so we've adopted 4 times now. And our third adoption, it was our third daughter in 3.5 years. So we had a lot of little people. We had about 8 weeks from when we found out to her being born. Our business was only 7 months old, and it was not providing for our family. So we were just going down every single month. It was the scariest situation we have ever financially faced. And we had a special enrollment of WalletWin. We discounted our class, and we just said, please, everybody, please enroll. We want to help you. We didn't do a fundraiser. I guess we could have done that, but we wanted to provide value and service to others, and that we felt that that's how the Lord wanted to provide in that moment. Just enough money came in for us to literally wire it to the lawyer 3 days after she was born. It cleared our bank account, and then we wired it to the lawyer. And then we had $7 in our bank account.
Oh my goodness.
And we just had that big enrollment. So we didn't have any other sales coming up. It was such a scary chapter, but
yeah.
God took care of us. The next week, we sometimes would Airbnb our home, but we had no control on when it would happen. It was super part-time. somebody requested to come Airbnb our house. Just
Wow.
there was always like the next little thing.
Yep.
And it took us probably a year and a half to rebuild from that moment. But we knew how to rebuild. And so it wasn't this devastation. We just restarted. And we've restarted many times over the last 14 years. All right, here's a super teeny tiny one that shows the level of like detail that God will go to. So during the pandemic, everything was getting scary and a little bit like people were being laid off. This was like, I'm talking like spring 2020, right? People are getting furloughed and laid off, and people were like slowing down their enrollment in our class. And like, we didn't know what it was going to mean for our business. And we didn't know anything.
Yep.
And we were feeling those fears. We, had enough, but we just weren't certain about where things were going to go.
Yep.
Jonathan, we opened a bag of goldfish one night, and inside of it, there were 3 goldfish stuck to each other. Just like one fish and then the next, and they were all kind of like 3 fish stuck together. And it was just the stupidest, silliest thing in the world. And then Jonathan, on a joke, listed it on eBay, and he made up a story about the 3 goldfish called Rad, Tad, and Jad. And he listed it for like $250. Something really silly and insane. And we forgot about it. And then, several weeks pass. Again, we're still feeling really uneasy. And what do you know, one night, we're just hanging around. I think there was a couple of bills like coming due, and we get an eBay notification that these goldfish sold. These goldfish sold for $250. And we laughed hysterically. And at that moment, we just knew like it really wasn't even about the money at this point. It was about God will take anything and he will figure out a way to provide for us. These stupid goldfish crackers.
Yep. That's hilarious.
And it was probably because somebody read Jonathan's description and thought it was super funny, and that was it.
Yeah.
But so, we've gone through like legitimate moments where it feels like you're just on the tightrope balancing all the things, and your inevitable demise is lurking beneath you. Like, we've had real moments of real financial stress and strain. And then we've had smaller ones, and God provided in the huge ones, and then he provided in the most random, small, minute ways too. So I'm just not scared anymore. I don't know if there's a financial circumstance that would even throw us, because we have just seen God's goodness so many times in our own life, but then also in the lives of our students as well.
Yeah.
I could share 15 more miraculous stories immediately off the top of my head, but we don't have time for that. But just know that really, if you are being a good steward, you're being prudent, you're being financially virtuous, you're handling your money wisely, and there is a moment where you're not sure about the future, or you feel like there's not enough, just know that, one, God can even use our financial suffering to sanctify us and transform us. And oftentimes, he will use a financial cross or burden to increase our capacity to trust him. So it's just one of the most common crosses that he's going to give us. And he's always inviting us in those moments to practice abandonment and trust. And we all need to grow in that. And then 2, he can help you find a way out. Our Lady Undoer of Knots is another one earlier I didn't mention, but there's always a path out. It's never the end. There's always some way that he can figure out the situation you're in. So just know that he won't waste it. He's ready to grow you and transform you in that cross, and he is ready to provide for you. And it might be hard, and it might mean humiliating things happen, and maybe a embarrassing situation happens, or you lose a job or whatever, but in God's economy, it's all usable. And then he's always ready to provide the next situation for you to say yes.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so on that note, as we look ahead to 2026, what is just one small but powerful money habit Catholics listening could start in the new year that would truly change their year?
I'm just going to go back to the budget. I mean, if you are not budgeting every single month, and then by that I mean taking account of all the money that's coming in and giving it a plan for every single month that we have. Not just like a set it and forget it. I created a budget once on paper and then I don't use it. This is like every month you're you're putting money into categories, and then through the month you're using that to inform your spending, and you're keeping track of things, and you're reconciling that your budget matches your bank account. I'm talking using the budget.
Yes.
That is the skill. So we actually have a Catholic guide to budgeting, catholicbudgetguide.com, if you want to share it in the show notes. But
okay, yeah,
this
absolutely.
it's a small video class where we teach people the step-by-step process of a workable budget, a budget that actually gets you results. And I think in there we provide a budget worksheet just to kind of get started, get the wheels turning, as well as some just budget joggers, like some ideas to get your brain flowing of, great, it's March. What kind of things should I be thinking about putting into my budget? Because sometimes we get blank. We don't always think like, oh, yeah, there's that holiday, or there's a bunch of birthdays, or this time of year, there's always that kid's sports fee or whatever. So it just, we've built those in to help you figure out so there's less surprises.
Love that. That's so helpful. Thank you so much. And honestly, that is so helpful for people because you're right. It's not just like the rent or mortgage and food. It's all these like, when is their dance class fee due? Who has a birthday this month? Is Christmas in a month? Like all these things that we forget to think about. I mean, Christmas comes every year, but I feel like it surprises so many people just like financially still. And it's so important to think about these things ahead of time. So I love that you have that. Where can everybody, other than go grabbing that, which I'll put in the show notes, find you, connect with you if they want to learn more and connect with you guys in WalletWin?
Yeah, so you can head on over to WalletWin.com if you want to check out the different financial resources we have. We also have time management resources like a planner or calendar. We're getting ready for the 2026 year. So we like to help people steward their time and their money very well. And then we are at WalletWin wherever you're on social media. So on Instagram, Facebook, we are on TikTok, and we have fun over there. We do things over on TikTok that we don't share on other platforms. And so you can follow us and hang out with us there. And we also have a podcast, a weekly free show called The Catholic Money Show. Wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube, it is available.
Perfect. I will make sure all those are in the show notes. Amanda, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you also to Mangio Arts and Holly Gurton for sponsoring this episode. If you made it this far, could you please stop and leave us a 5-star review after this episode? That helps bump us in the algorithm and just get us out to more Catholic women who need to hear the same message. Thank you again so much, Amanda, for being here. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks.